It was announced by the man himself that Howie Rose, longtime voice of the New York Mets. I wish I had the number in front of me of the year. All I can tell you is that I've been a Mets fan since the mid '90s and a member that of the Mets community that has always been calling games is Howie Rose, whether it be on FSNY way back in the day or the UPN days or when WOR was WFAN. And they're not even on WOR now. They're on a different radio network, I think. Regardless,
WCBS now.
That's where they are. Howie Rose, longtime play-by-play voice of the New York Mets, is announcing his retirement or has announced his retirement. He will be calling it a career at the end of the 2026 season. How did you receive this, Rich, when you saw Howie himself make the announcement?
Yeah, I mean, it's sad, you had a feeling we were getting closer to this in recent years, just with the amount of games that he's cut back on. It wasn't that long ago that it was announced that he was really only doing home games this year, other than the series at Yankee Stadium. Anyways, last year he was away quite often. So it felt like we were coming to this. Obviously, Howie's getting older, and on the TV side, Gary's getting older as well. Like, I've been thinking about eventually we're going to hit that point where we turn over to a new generation in these booths. And we've been so fortunate, I think, to have these two long-standing voices that come with Mets games for most of our lives, if not our entire lives. And I think of Howie Rose, and I think of being in the car in the summertime with my dad, and before I even liked sports, but hearing the voice of Howie Rose and the old WFAN Mets jingle as it would go to commercial in the summertime. And it just brings back good memories, and it's going to stink to not have that anymore after this year, but I think I'm going to cherish it a lot more knowing it beforehand. I think I will probably listen to the radio a lot more this year than I would have normally. And it just made me think of like all of my favorite Howie Rose calls, of course, over all these years.
What's the Alonso home run off the current Mets closer is the one that obviously stands out recently, but do you have another Howie Rose call that you go to for one of your favorites?
Johan.
The no-hitter. Yeah. Same.
Yeah. It's Howie talked about it. He's done a million interviews, and I've probably listened to all of them about this, that he truly never thought it was going to happen. It was, what are they, over 9,000 games into their franchise's existence before that had happened. It became a running meme on Twitter. If you guys remember, like hashtag not today boss from the old WFAN Mets booth Twitter account. For me, it's that one. I was too young to appreciate, at least in the moment, the 9/11 Piazza home run. I think that's probably up in his Mount Rushmore of calls. Maybe that's something we do towards the end of this year, but maybe when this year's done, as we do the Howie Rose, like top 5, top 10 calls, whatever that is. But I'd say the 9/11 home run's up there. The home run that Piazza hit to cap off that huge comeback against the Braves in like the late 90s, early 2000s. Again, didn't see this live, but I've seen the highlights since then. Obviously, Pete Alonso, and there's a special place in my heart for when they clinched the pennant at Wrigley Field in 2015, and he called that. Obviously less epic, I suppose, because that was a sweep. You also have when they beat the Dodgers in Game 5 that same year in the NLDS. That's a really good one. I heard Evan and Tiki's show had played that one earlier this week. So yeah, I mean, there's plenty to choose from. I'm sure I'm glossing over some as well, but those are the ones that come to my mind first.
I think you hit all the big ones. I think the Piazza home run was the one that stood out to me because of what it means, not just to the Mets, not just to Howie and his legendary career, but just what it meant to the city and to the country in the moment.
Yeah.
Anytime you do a list like that with the Mets and you bring up greatest home runs in franchise history, that's in a tier on its own for what it meant to the sport and the time that existed. So that was the one that stood out to me. The Johan no hitter was the one that stood out to me as number 2. Most importantly for me, because I was driving up to New York from my home in Virginia that Friday night, and I was like, I'll try to time it out that I like time out my trip that I'm listening to the game on the radio, because it was Mets Cardinals. The Mets were having a surprisingly good season. It was Johan on the mound. I was like, oh, I'll have Howie call the game with me and I'll be able to listen to Howie's call on the way up. And I'm driving through DC and he actually says the line. I know he's said this in the past, but he said during the game when Johan had like 60 pitches in the 4th inning, it was like, if you're thinking tonight's the night, it's not going to be the night, Mets fans. And lo and behold, 4 innings later, he's like calling a no-hitter in the 9th inning. So that in particular for me will always stand out, that I didn't hear a word of Gary Cohen's version of that call until the next day when I was able to watch it on like Mets in 60. And then I ended up getting as like a Christmas present the DVD of the Mets, the Johan no-hitter. Kids, for those who don't know, a DVD is how we used to watch movies. We would get them sent on a disc. A disc is what a CD. Oh, you don't know what a CD is either. Regardless, it was a physical piece of physical media. That's how I remember the no-hitter, though, is I experienced it through Howie Rose's narration. And yeah, I think just the passage of time is what's hitting me with all the like Sam Rosen is retired and out of my life. I grew up on Marv Albert, but he's been gone for a while, so that doesn't change as much. Like Joe Buck not calling the Super Bowl anymore, and Kevin Burkhardt actually calling it. Kevin Burkhardt was a voice like Evan that you're talking about that I listened to on overnight radio when I was in college. So, it's just another sign that we're getting older. And I think Keith Radd does a good job. I think, like most people, I never am presented with the opportunity to listen to the Mets game on the radio as much anymore. So this will, like you said, this will give me an opportunity when they're on a nationally televised game. Like, honestly, Thursday, when they're playing on NBC, I might tune into Howie and Keith on the radio instead and try to sync it up. That's the biggest thing, Rich, is in college when the game was out of market and I should say in market, because I lived in Virginia. And I'd have to watch the Nesson. And you and I have joked about how bad the Nesson feed is. Masson, excuse me, not Nesson. Yes. Nesson's actually pretty good up in New England. The Masson, the Mid-Atlantic Sports Network that does Orioles and Nationals games. So I would be able to watch
and FP Santangelo is one of the worst booths of all time.
Let's
although
be
they're not
silent for full at bats. Yes, exactly.
Not around anymore.
That's right. Bob Carpenter retired too, so maybe it'll actually be a good broadcast now. Apologies to Bob Carpenter. Whatever.
See you later.
Oh wow, you did it. That was good. If this gets clipped, whatever. I'm not apologizing the way Rich did. I'm saying like if somebody else clips it instead.
I'm not clipping this one.
Yeah, we're not just doing a second apology. Point is, when a game was like when the Mets would play the Nationals or even the Orioles, I would be stuck not able to watch it on SNY because in market games were blacked out on MLB TV. So I would sync up the Masson feed with Howie on the radio. So yeah, we speak on behalf of Mets fans everywhere. Howie, you'll be missed. And the Mets are just going to have to win the World Series this year. So your final call as the voice of the Mets is the final out of a championship.
That would be a hell of a thing.
I think it's a good plan. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, when the Mets were in the playoffs in 2024, every single game I synced up the radio to the TV broadcast. So I listened to every play live was through Howie Rose. So I heard the Pete Alonso home run from his call live. It was a pain in the butt to sync it up every single night because there's delays and the different feeds and all that stuff. But I would do it every single night when they played that entire postseason run. And it was a very enjoying ritual that I had with that. And I will probably do that a lot more this year.